Some Canadians could soon be going to the polls after 6 MPs either resigned or announced their intention to resign their seat. That means Prime Minister Mark Carney will have to call 6 by-elections, 3 in Quebec, 1 in Ontario, 1 in Saskatchewan, and 1 in BC. 3 of those ridings were held by the Liberals, and the NDP, Bloc Québécois, and Conservatives each held one of the others. Our party insiders are back with us, Greg McEachran, Fred Delory, and Melanie Richer. So, Fred, potentially some electoral action this summer, 6 vacancies, although we were just discussing off camera, some people are taking longer to go. Like, they've announced that they're going to leave, but we don't know when exactly that's going to take effect. But still, electoral test for the Prime Minister, for the opposition parties. I know these are not necessarily conservative strongholds, but what are you watching for as voters could go to the polls in 6 places this summer?
Out of the 6 ridings, 4 of them are in very super safe seats, 3 Liberals and 1 Conservative. It's the 2 seats in Quebec that I'm most interested in. I think most people should be interested in. One currently held by the Bloc Québécois and 1 by the NDP. The Liberals should be in the hunt for both of those seats. The polls are in their favor, and they're close there in many regards in the last few elections. So it definitely could be competitive. And, you know, we have a super slim majority, and if the Liberals can win those, we'll just have a really slim majority.
Yeah. Mel?
Yeah, I'm taking a look at the same ridings with the addition of Stephen Guilbeault's riding in Laurier-Sainte-Marie. That used to be an NDP riding, and it was a Bloc riding before then. So looking to see what happens there, and how the Prime Minister manages the fallout with Stephen Guilbeault. I see that he's become, attack dog number 1 for the Conservatives on Twitter or on X the last few days. So maybe the Prime Minister was able to keep Mr. Guilbeault on side. So maybe he's able to manage that well, because we know he's quite popular in Montreal and quite popular with a lot of folks who place fighting the climate crisis their number 1 issue, which is a big thing in Montreal. I would say for me, the big test is, I think, or I should say, this is going to be the first big test for Avi Lewis as NDP leader, is what happens with Rosemont Patry and Alexandre Boulris' seat. Obviously, that's been an NDP seat since 2011, I think, due to Jack, and then very much due to Alexandre Boulris. So is he able to keep that? And will his message translate to folks on the ground? And also, is he going to be competitive in Laurier-Sainte-Marie? If folks are unimpressed with the Prime Minister as it relates to environment policies, this should be, Avi Lewis's to pick up. So taking a close look at what that looks like and how that plays out.
Greg, what are you hearing?
I would agree with Mel. I think that Alexandre Boulris is one to watch, because, if the NDP do well, it could be a bit of an igniter for them. If the Liberals are able to take it, that gives them another, edge in Quebec, which is very, very important in terms of the whole electoral fortunes. But also keeping in mind that there's a provincial election in Quebec this year, and what issues may be driven by that. I mean, if you look at Jonathan Wilkinson's seat in BC, you would wonder if the NDP were going to be strong there, but, the provincial party and the premier are not polling very well in British Columbia. That could be a drag on the NDP. And I know, I think Fred put that in the safe seat. So I think the one in Quebec is going to be the one really interesting to watch. The other thing is, everyone has been chatting, when is there going to be a cabinet shuffle? Will there be a cabinet shuffle ahead of those by-elections? And may that play a role if, in certain provinces, if somebody else is added to cabinet nearby, is there going to be coattails from that?
I was talking to some people in government, and they're really reluctant to shuffle cabinet, because they know what happened with the Trudeau government. Every time they shuffled, there was a scandal, a crisis, there was something to, it was never worked out for them, right? So I think there's a bit of a reluctance to do that this summer. I mean, who knows? There are some poor performers that might need to be shuffled out. We know those names. But I don't know, Fred, do you think that that's a possibility as well? We're talking about by-elections, cabinet shuffle. Could that be in the offing before they come back in September?
It'd be strange if there wasn't a cabinet shuffle. I mean, and just naturally, not even because of underperforming ministers. A year and a half in, usually you make a bit of tinkering around the edges. But there's been some pretty weak cabinet ministers, and I'm sure there's other members of parliament that have been doing very well, maybe not even in cabinet. Maybe there's some backbenchers that could be moving up. And you have to have that hope as a backbencher that you have that opportunity. And there could be some ministers that are doing a really good job, maybe not as a big a portfolio they could be in. So I would be very surprised if there was no shuffle before.
Yeah, I hear you.
fact.
Some of the signals I was getting is we're not sure about that anytime soon, at least. Can we stay on Avi Lewis for a second? Because obviously we have these by-elections coming up. One of them is North Vancouver, Jonathan Wilkinson's seat. That seems like a natural place for Avi Lewis to run to try and get into Parliament. I mean, he ran in Vancouver Centre in the last election. In 2021, he ran in West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country. Good thing I remembered that one. That's always a mouthful. So, I mean, like, it makes sense for him to maybe potentially slide in and run in this riding to get into the House, to get some attention, to get some press, to press the government within Parliament. But he seems to have ruled that out for now. I mean, it does seem like a strange choice because he's really a non-entity, at least on Parliament Hill, because he doesn't have a seat. And yet he's slow rolling his return to Parliament. Why do you think he's doing that right now?
You know, I'm of two minds on this. You definitely don't want to put your leader in a seat that he's not going to win. So, you know, if there's no path to him potentially winning in that seat, you definitely don't want that to be the first big, you know, story surrounding him. So I would hope that the team is doing some of that internal polling or on the ground polling. And if that's not a seat for him, then that's a smart move. The flip side of that, though, is to your point, he's not really anywhere to be seen as it relates to you know, the news of the day. I was talking to a few journalists who were like, there was, you know, this issue that was the perfect issue for him, and it took 48 hours for us to even get a statement, and he wasn't able to be on camera, so there was no clip, and we're TV, we want a clip, we don't even necessarily want a statement. So those lessons, it's been 2 months, so those 2 months, 3 months now, so those things are learning problems. You know, you've got the summer coming up. What I would recommend to the team is to figure out what are those problems that they need to solve? Who is he going to be, not just for New Democrats, but for, you know, everyday Canadians? Where are the places that he's popular? Where he will be popular will not be the same as where Jagmeet was popular. Yep. The next pickups for Jagmeet were in Alberta. Those are not going to be Avi Lewis's next pickups, right? So figuring out where he is popular, if that riding is not one of them, then they shouldn't run him there. But the problem being is the further away you are from running in a by-election, the further you are away from being in the House, the less you're able to respond to the news of the day, the less you're able to show people that when you're given the opportunity to govern on their behalf, and opposition, that's bills, that's responding to bills, that's putting forward opposition day motions. If you're not able to do that in the House, then that credibility factor, which is already a problem for the NDP, just kind of keeps getting worse and worse. So the longer you wait to get in the House, obviously the harder it is for you to travel the country and to talk to people.
Greg, what do you make of this decision to sit out the by-election in North Vancouver, at least now? I mean, he could change his mind. He hasn't been definitive on it, but when he has been asked about running in a by-election, he's shown he's not very interested in doing that anytime soon.
Yeah, it's very odd, especially since he had run there previously, although with not great success. And Mel could correct me if I'm wrong here, but I kind of find the Mr. Lewis's lack of attention or time in Ottawa a bit puzzling. And not that Ottawa is the center of the universe, but it is the center of our political universe in Canada. It is where the political press is based. I've been told, you know, in terms of him being in Ottawa, having senior staff in Ottawa, it's not been a priority. And I've seen this provincially where, you know, an NDP leader did not have a seat, but they camped out at the legislature. They were there every day for the scrums. You know, we used to tease about, you know, that Helen of the Library he was the nickname, but they were there because when the House was sitting, that's where the political press was. And, you know, every once in a while showing up and doing something from the press theater is not going to get you the same sort of benefits. And it's not like he has a massive caucus that he can depend on to keep the NDP in the news, political news, day in, day out.
Fred?
Yeah, look, I think it would be dumb for him to run in this by-election because he'd get crushed in it. And there's not a good way to introduce yourself to Canadians. He's still very much unknown. And I agree with everyone said he should be out doing stuff, but there are a lot of tools today. There's a lot of thing called social media. You can be out there pushing messages through that. I don't even see him there doing it. So he's completely absent from the discussion other than us right now.
Yeah, and he ran in Vancouver Centre and West Vancouver, as I said. He came third in both those seats, right? He only got 12% of the vote in Vancouver Centre the last time in 2025. So maybe that's why he's reluctant to run in Vancouver or the area around it. Let's talk about Pierre Poilievre, because he was out today. I mean, that's one guy who actually is still very front and center, right? We still got him in our news items all the time. He's doing press conferences almost every week. He does his Sunday thing. He's out in the foyer whenever he wants, basically, which seems like quite more often than he did before the last election campaign. So he's trying to stay in the mix, right? He's trying not to cede any ground entirely. What do you make of his strategy? Do you think that's a good one? And what should he do this summer to get back in the mix? Because as I put to Melissa Landsman, they're still quite far back. Like they're double digits behind in most polls, behind the governing Liberals at this point.
You know, it's so funny. I think that Avi needs to do a lot more to be in the mix. And what I would say is Pierre Poilievre probably needs to do a little bit less, to be a little bit less in the mix. And not that it's not important to be able to respond, to be able to get your message across. The problem with Pierre Poilievre is it feels so desperately like he's reaching on every single thing and exaggerating every single thing and trying to connect the dots that don't connect properly, that he's losing, I think, a little bit of credibility every time that he does. One of the things that we would teach in message delivery is your message has to be believable, but it also has to be believable to the people that you're saying it to. It can't just be factual. It has to be in the realm of what they believe to be believable. So, when we hear Monsieur Poilievre talking about how this is the worst prime minister in the G7 and crime is worse and this is worse and this is worse, and if you do, a quick Google search and that's not true, and you're not credible. It's not a great look. Your message seems, again, I'm clearly a New Democrat, so I'm not his audience, but it seems a little bit desperate, and it seems like you don't necessarily know what you're talking about. And when you're going against someone who people inherently believe is credible on the things that he's doing, it just makes it look worse. So I think he's got a lot of work to do to figure out what is a message that works. We've heard Fred give really good advice on this panel. There are some things that you can do, like say, I'm going to keep the government's feet to the fire on this, the MOU in Alberta. We will make sure this happens because we know it's important for everyone. Instead, this is never going to happen. So figuring out where he should go there's a massive opportunity, I would say. I'm hoping that, my folks at the NDP take it up, but a massive opportunity for Pierre Poilievre to be the reasonable opposition of, I'm not sure that this is going to work, but I'm going to make sure that the government continues and follows through on it so it does. Instead, he just seems to not really know what he's talking about. So I think maybe he needs to spend the next few months figuring out what is that, that gray that he needs to live on to connect with what people are feeling, still be the opposition, but be a little bit more credible in his opposition.
Greg, what would you like to see from Mr. Poilievre? I'm sure nothing but bad things, but what should he do to turn his fortunes around?
Come on, you judge me so harshly. Look, I am obviously red stripe liberal. I can give communication advice, but we've been talking about this for a while. You do see some things that they move on. We saw less of Andrew Scheer as the session went on. And I think, a lot of, conservatives said to me that they did not like that if it wasn't the leader, that's who they were putting out, and it's the person who lost them the 2019 election. All of a sudden, you saw some MPs behind Pierre Poilievre at announcements or at scrums. A little too little, a little too late. They said that they were about affordability, but they didn't really follow through. One of the things that I thought was pretty rank was when a Conservative MP had the chief science officer for Canada before committee, and he asked her to define what a woman is. And you know who else does that? MAGA Republicans. They've been trying to get that to become an issue since 2022. And if I don't know if I've got enough money to fill my gas tank, I'm wondering why the Conservatives are asking questions like that. Or they're bringing cakes to the House of Commons. I mean, you can't make your criticism of the Prime Minister not being in question period stick when you turn question period into a circus. Having Pierre Poilievre over and over and over and over again say, is it a technical recession or a real recession? After he already told us that it was a real recession. He used good MPs who, with great reputations, he put them out trying to tear down Prime Minister Carney's economic bona fides. And he tried to say his were better. But never, ever did he give Canadians an example that why he believed his were better. And I think you have two sides to Pierre Poilievre. You had a clip earlier where he was reading from notes and he was kind of stumbling, or you have the over-rehearsed side. And I think people are kind of tired of either one. I mean, yesterday there was a poll out, Prime Minister Carney is 25 points ahead of Pierre Poilievre. I don't think that they did anything this session to try to improve or capture Canadians' attention, that they think that Pierre Poilievre is somebody that is going places. And I really wonder if this stays as a majority and the election is a couple of years off. I really do wonder if Pierre Poilievre will be the Conservative leader in the next election.
Fred, final word to you.
Look, I think he needs to spend the summer doing some soul searching and figuring out what he wants to be. Does he want to be Prime Minister of Canada? And if he does, he needs to get on the right track. He's not on it right now. He's on a losing track. We lost the last election, and we are losing points every day, it seems. Like we're going further and further back. The election is a couple years away. There is time to get on the right path and to get moving that way. But you have to look forward and not be chasing headlines every week. That doesn't work, and it's proving not to work. It's not credible when he comes out hammering the way he does. And as Melanie pointed out, some of the things he's saying, it's not believable right now. People aren't buying it. You don't look credible, and that hurts you further. So plan ahead, look ahead, and try to get to that.
Yeah. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much to our Political Pulse panel, Greg McEachran, Fred Delory, and Melanie Richer. Nice to see you all.